that notion, we don't hesitate to find an adapter when we're traveling internationally, right? So we know we need to adapt. I think that might not always be quite so clear when we think about the changing environment that we're in. We need to think about what our toolkit might be. And what we know is that time is half of what we had before. I did some work with Apple some years ago, and it was very interesting. They basically have a very limited amount of time to design the training for their new product releases because there's quite a bit of secrecy inside of the organization for brand reasons around new releases. And so, can you imagine that if you only had 2 days to design and launch a training initiative for something that might be quite new? So they called that radical design. I think if you were to assume that you have half the time, you would be a lot better off, half the money. And then remember that issue of having constraint as an asset? You can then think about new ways. It'll help you get out of that mindset of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because chances are you'll have half the money, the people, the resources, and the time. So adapt by planning for it. Cut it in half, and then get creative around what it is that you're going to do. It's a much better mindset for adapting. Another great lesson we can learn from Julia Child is, have a mindset of experimentation. She flipped a potato on TV, and it landed on the floor. The only way you learn to flip things is to just flip them. And that means you have to be more playful. Start small. If you keep failing in small ways, you'll keep learning. And you want to stay playful because if you're afraid to make mistakes, it makes it harder to adapt. So this notion of playfulness, this notion of being ready for adapting is really key. And then another kind of mind hack that's very helpful for adapting is the constant question. You want to constantly be asking questions. And one of the biggest questions you want to have on your forefront, I actually have this on the wall in my office, is what if? What if? And if you're constantly asking yourself that question, you will be ahead of the curve. You can see around corners. You'll be ready to adapt.